Welcome to Innovation Huntsville Week and blast off how Alabama Innovation seeks to propel startups. My name is Carter Wells. I'm the Vice President for Economic Development at the HudsonAlpha Institute for Biotechnology. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Innovate Huntsville as well as the Alabama Innovation Commission. Innovate Huntsville 2021 is a week of collaboration and celebration of the entrepreneurial system in North Alabama. This week is dedicated to bringing entrepreneurs and innovators together to build momentum and opportunity around Huntsville's vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. Starting today and each day of the week, we will feature informative and engaging content, highlighting and revealing insights and inner workings of startups and innovators and entrepreneurs. Innovate Huntsville is supported by HudsonAlpha, BizTech, the Huntsville Chamber of Commerce, UAH College of Business, HAZBAT, I2C at UAH, NADA, SBDC, RISE, Rocket Hatch, and the Catalyst Center. Thanks to everyone, both the individuals and the organizations making this week possible. Huntsville has outstanding educational institutions, a highly skilled and creative workforce, incubators, and a healthy economic base. We also have entrepreneurs that have had significant success in a variety of technology-based sectors, and we want to build on those successes and our area's strong foundation and resources. Today, I'm honored to represent HudsonAlpha for this discussion with members of the Alabama Innovation Commission. The commission is made up of 15 commission members from across Alabama and a 6-member advisory council. And the advisory council have tremendous reach beyond the state of Alabama. The Innovation Commission was created by Governor Ivey last July. And since then, the group has not only been busy, but more importantly, productive. The commission is Alabama's first foray into a true focus on entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. And the commission brings that group of 15 members and 6 advisory commission members to from the private sector and the public sector to develop policies that'll create a more resilient, inclusive, and robust economy for people all across the state. The chair of the commission is Representative Bill Poole of Tuscaloosa, who is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Education Budget Committee. Sorry, my audio apparently is not working. So one second. Alex, is that a little bit better?
We're still having a little bit trouble hearing you just on certain times.
Let me switch real quick. My apologies.
And try.
I think we can maybe hear you better now.
All right, hang on one second. Okay, how about that?
Sounds good.
All right, sorry about that. As I was saying, the chair of the commission is Representative Bill Poole. The vice chair is
Carter, we lost you again.
Alex, how about now?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'll stop moving. Maybe that's it. So earlier this month, the commission released their first recommendations. These 4 initial recommendations were to develop a statewide innovation coordination and incentive structure to generate additional and successful business growth, to provide a private fund advisor exemption to encourage early stage formation of private venture and capital funds, and fund and launch Alabama branding campaign to develop Alabama as a destination for entrepreneurs and innovators, and then to use the SBIR, STTR, the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer matching funds through a state program that could and should potentially match the existing funding. So I'm going to turn this over to our speakers in just a minute, but let me go through each of the three panelists that we have today, Zeke Smith, Miller Girvin, and Peggy Salmon. Zeke Smith is Alabama Power's Executive Vice President of External Affairs with over 3 decades with the company. He has a wide-ranging portfolio of responsibilities and truly a wide-ranging portfolio that includes anything from environmental affairs, charitable giving, corporate affairs, government relations, PR, and regulatory affairs. He also serves as chairman of the Alabama Power Foundation Board of Directors, and prior to the current position of VP for External Affairs, Zeke was VP for Financial and Regulatory Planning, as well as Regulatory Services. Miller Girvin. Miller was born and raised in Birmingham and serves as the Executive Vice President of EDPA, and specifically to innovation and entrepreneurship. She's a graduate of Princeton University and started her career in Washington, D.C., and then moved back to Birmingham in 2011, while working a bit remotely out of Washington, D.C., and then joining and working with the Alabama Capital Network, starting in 2017 and serving as the CEO there. Peggy Salmon, who is here in Huntsville with a company, Gene Capture. She's an experienced entrepreneur with a background in multiple high-tech startups in environmental monitoring, wireless, and biotech. Like I said, she serves as the CEO of Gene Capture, a startup medical device company here at HudsonAlpha, and has been a member of the board of BioAlabama, and she served as the organization's chairperson from 2017 through 2019. And in that role, she made great strides and made a huge difference to be able to move BioAlabama into a viable and thriving organization today. And finally, she's been an official and unofficial mentor for many entrepreneurs over the years. So with that, I'd like to jump into some of the questions. And so if everybody's ready, Zeke, I'll start with you if that's all right. Let me just get a little background about why the commission was formed by Governor Ivey, and from your standpoint, how is this either leading or working with ideas from others in the state or around the United States, excuse me.
Sure. Well, first, Carter, thank you for HudsonAlpha and for hosting this today. I know I'm excited to join the Huntsville community today. When I think about joining you guys, man, Huntsville's the bread, this is your bread and butter. I mean, Huntsville is a city born and bred with, technology-based companies and innovation. So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir today. And certainly there's many people in the audience that know much more about this than I do. But I am joined by two people, Peggy and Miller, who certainly represent two of the state's most respected leaders. So I'm excited to be here today, to join you all today and share a little bit about what's happening with the Alabama Innovation Commission and the Advisory Council. But as you said, the governor did form this in July of 2020, and kind of to basically answer the question, you think about certainly our governor from day one has been focused on economic development, community development, and growing the economy in the state of Alabama. To do that, certainly as the leader of the state, you have to assess and you have to evaluate. And so our governor has been very proactive to work with us to say, let's take an assessment of the innovation economy in the state of Alabama, and what are some recommendations that we can make to move this forward and to grow and elevate the state of Alabama. So certainly assessing the current innovation economy, developing recommendations around innovation and technology-based companies for the state of Alabama. That comes through policy and it comes through action. And much of what we're trying to accomplish as the commission is to do that. So we have a shared vision with the governor. We have a shared vision with many across the state of Alabama to say, okay, what can we do in terms of policies and actions to grow the entrepreneurship economy in the state of Alabama, the innovation economy in the state of Alabama, the tech-based economy in the state of Alabama. That's what we're trying to do. You know, we are proud that this is the Alabama Innovation Commission is the first statewide commission devoted to entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology. That's our sole focus. And that's what we're going to be doing throughout the course of our time here to do what we need to do. We have a great leadership balance with the Alabama Innovation Council. It's a diverse group from all over the state of Alabama, from North Alabama to South Alabama, large business, small business, profits, nonprofits. And as you said, certainly led by bipartisan elected leaders across the state of Alabama. Bill Poole is our chair. He is our chair of this commission, and then Senator Greg Reed is our vice chair. And those two are doing a great job in leading us through this effort. We're excited about that. Their whole goal and the commission's goal is to develop policies and implement those policies to create a robust, inclusive economy, as you mentioned, Carter, at the very beginning. I'm also excited about the advisory council. My goodness, everybody can look at the members of that council, excluding me, and you can see, man, we've got some heavy hitters. We got some All-Americans on that council. And certainly it's led by Dr. Condoleezza Rice. We're going to talk about her a little bit more in just a second, but excited about that. Leveraging the strengths of the advisory council has been a clear success for us, and we'll continue to do that as we move through this journey with the commission. I'm certainly fortunate to be a part of this commission, excited to be able to lead the advisory council, excited to do something to make a difference for the state of Alabama. And that's really what we're trying to do as a commission. You ask about other states. Well, we have done some research with other states. Our states to the east and the west, Georgia, we got North Carolina, you got other states further out. You've got Illinois, Iowa, Oregon. You've got Louisiana. You've got states like that have all formed some form of a commission or a council, but all of them have different focus areas and different areas that they are focusing on. Varied scope, varied focus. We believe that we have a unique advantage in that certainly we are a statewide commission covering all parts of the state of Alabama. Like I said, North Alabama to South Alabama, urban and rural. And we also have a diverse team, a very diverse team, to make sure that we get the diversity of thought and inclusiveness that we need as a commission to develop sound policies for the state of Alabama. Now, I did mention the advisory council, and Dr. Rice, she clearly chairs the prestigious Hoover Institution at Stanford University. We believe that is a unique thing that we have, is this advisory council with just so many influential, proven leaders from New York to California, all which have ties and roots in Alabama, and they just want to make a difference for the state of Alabama. So I believe we're positioned for success. We need engagement from all over the state of Alabama. That's why I'm very excited, Carter, for you to host us today so that we can engage with the Huntsville community in North Alabama. So that's kind of who we are and why we exist. The governor shares this vision to say, okay, let's assess where we are, let's review where we are, and let's make some recommendations that will move us to a better place. And that's really why we exist.
Got it. Thanks very much for that. And like I said, as you said, the commission is a statewide organization, and here at HudsonAlpha and in North Alabama, we want to participate, we want to engage, and we want to share the successes and learn from the successes of others from around the state, and then engage for success in the future. So thanks very much for what you're doing on this front. So let me switch a little bit to the subcommittee work, where a lot of the discussions are being had right now. Both Miller and Peggy are heavily involved in the two subcommittees, finance and infrastructure, and then the education and corporate subcommittee. And so let me turn it to both. Let me I'll start with Miller, but would like to hear from Peggy as well on the committee work that's being done on both of those committees. So Miller, can you start?
Sure, Carter, and thank y'all so much for having me. I want to echo Zeke's comments that we're so grateful for HudsonAlpha and all the work that y'all are doing up in Huntsville for the innovation of Alabama. So as you mentioned, I am on the Finance and Infrastructure Subcommittee, which is led by Senator Greg Reed. And he and I have worked really well together and really enjoyed just the engagement with our subcommittee members. And wanted to run through a few things that we have talked about. Zeke mentioned, or I guess Carter, in your opening remarks, you mentioned the interim recommendations that we have made. And those came out of a lot of our subcommittee work, and Peggy can certainly speak to the education and corporate subcommittee work that they have done. But we have talked a good deal about access to capital and the impact that it has on our state startups. I would put many of our early stage companies up against others in coastal areas that are getting millions and millions of dollars of funding, but we lack a lot of the seed funds that will invest in pre-revenue companies, as well as a risky, to be honest, group of angel investors that'll bet early and often. We do have some great seed funds. I see Matt Hoddle on here within the Alabama Futures Fund, but and there are also some fantastic angel investors, and I do see a couple of names that I recognize on the participant list. And I worked with a lot of them at the Alabama Capital Network, but we just need more. And one of the interim recommendations that we did send to Governor Ivey for this legislative cycle, and this would fall into the Alabama Securities Commission, but was focused on creating investment advisor exemptions for private fund advisors so that the costs associated with starting a small fund and supporting Alabama's early stage companies are not prohibitive. Certainly would want to maintain a lot of the consumer protections. You don't want a bunch of cowboys coming in with money and taking grandma's Social Security check, but there can be some ways of working through that can open up some capital lanes for our startups. So another idea that sort of dovetails into the access to capital discussion is a focus on commercialization within our state's amazing universities. As Carter mentioned, there are a number of early stage companies that are receiving or applying for SBIR and STTR funding through that grant program coordinated by the Small Business Administration. But there is a need, and we've heard this from a number of the folks that are coming out of our universities, that there's a need for additional sort of less stringent capital that can match those funding levels at the federal level. So we have had some robust discussions about how the state could create a matching program for those grants to help encourage technological innovation out of all of our state's R&D efforts. So we're hoping that can sort of start moving during this legislative cycle, or at least we can have a good starting point there. Another thing that we have spent a lot of time talking about, and the members of the advisory council, of which Zeke is the chair, have been really involved in this discussion. We have talked a lot about the state's image and the perception of, or the perception of our image. So sometimes those are two different things. And I'm sure Peggy's subcommittee has talked about this too, but I know that we as Alabamians often assume that people may know more than they actually do about Alabama. And as an example, I mean, I bet very few people that we'd love to woo to Alabama know that Huntsville has the number of engineers and rocket scientists and PhDs that it does, and that Forbes named y'all a top city for engineers. Those are things that we need to get out there. And, some people know, but we just need to shout it from the rooftops. So we have talked about what a public relations campaign for the state of Alabama might look like. Then one last thing that I will mention is that we are working on a strategy to really engage our strong industry partners in a cluster-based approach to growth and to economic development. We've got some incredible companies in the state that are poised to really boost our innovation sector. And if we can figure out a way to really harness both the the growth and the knowledge of those established companies and the innovation of the emerging ones to work together, I know that there's some real promise there. So really excited to see what we can develop and flesh out on that cluster strategy. So I'll turn it over to Peggy.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And as Miller said, that's correct. There's a lot of spillover between the two subcommittees, especially access to capital and Alabama's image. And so in our subcommittee, which is education and corporate, we've looked at what has historically and in other states been real traction leverage points for entrepreneurship and startup companies and successes. And this clustering approach has really been shown to be very effective. And accelerators and mentors. So we've taken a look at those three, and there's a number of accelerators in Alabama already. This commission is not recommending starting a new accelerator or bringing in a new oversight to that, but more, how could the commission support accelerators that are already out there and already doing good work? So I think, you know, when I'm around a bunch of entrepreneurs, there's this sort of spitball approach of throwing out ideas. What's really a challenge on this commission is we don't just want ideas. We really want to turn them into policy that can happen quickly, that can have a quick payback. And that's what the governor has asked for. So that's a challenge. We're trying to look at the entire state, our competition, the other states around us, our special features, all the technology that we have, and how do we move it quickly? So a few challenges that we've looked at specifically that turn into recommendations, in addition to grant matching and others, is that other states and other regions in the country that really are making quick moves on entrepreneurial and certainly technical successes have strong mentoring approaches. And we're looking at, is there a way to have a mentoring infrastructure statewide that would help get some of these startups moving faster, make the networks happen faster, get the funds rolling faster. So that's one area that's been very interesting, and that's a lovely connection between corporate and education, the universities and the startups and the accelerators. I've talked to a lot of my friends who run accelerators, and they have said, yes, we need capital, yes, we need mentoring, but the number one thing we need is to get people past their preconception that Alabama is slow and that Alabama is backwards and it's a last name problem. So as Miller said, the emphasis on getting a unified statewide branding will help everybody. I think we all know how difficult it is sometimes to try to recruit someone to Alabama. Once they're here, they love it, but getting them in here is difficult. The other area that's been a real interesting conversation in our group is what we call the mindset. Coming out of Alabama universities, is there a mindset to start something new? And I am certainly a product of Huntsville's innovation hub and energy and camaraderie and support. So I know what it's like to have a circle around you that's encouraging you on. You know, how do we get that to happen in other places, in rural places where there's a lot of ideas, but it's just hard to get them to take hold? So yeah, I'm thrilled to be on this commission. It's been very stimulating, and we are about halfway through our timeline where we're trying to push towards recommendations that can actually look at real policy. So it's been very, very interesting. And I think Huntsville is well represented. Huntsville's definitely got an image across the state as very high tech, good energy, good association with UAH and the other universities here. So there's a lot happening. I'll hand it back to you, Carter.
Sure. Thanks, Peggy. And Peggy, and for everybody that's a part of this, I mentioned earlier of Peggy's work as a mentor with a lot of different organizations over the years, but specific to HudsonAlpha's Navigate program. And that's something that's understandably focused on biotechnology, but what she brings into the sessions that we have, really, I mean, that's the type of person we want to have from a state standpoint, to be able to have some of those statewide networks of mentors that are going to be remarkably helpful for the startup and the entrepreneur, wherever he or she may be. Peggy, let me dovetail off of what you were just saying about moving those initial recommendations into final form, which I think are due in October of this year. And so if really for each of y'all, what would you say are some of the plans for moving those initial recommendations, and then what's the work that will take place over the next few months as you craft those final policy recommendations.
Well, Peggy, okay, Peggy Miller, I'll start, and certainly I want to turn it over to you two who have done so much work already. You know, you think about really what we're trying to do. I think of it in 3 A's. You know, we're trying to assess, and then we're trying to adapt, and then we're trying to adopt. And we're still, you know, kind of in that kind of squishy word of assessing and adapting at this point, but certainly through the initial recommendations, we're beginning to adopt. But there have been some things that are going on. We've got great momentum, and we're seeing that right now with the leadership of Bill Poole and Senator Reed, in that House Bill, I think it's 192, was signed into law by the governor. And House Bill 192 is the renewal of our economic development incentives for the state of Alabama, Growing Alabama and the Jobs Act, which are so important to making sure that we maintain competitiveness against the other states. But what I wanted to talk about around that is there were some changes. There were some updates to that in the incentive programs. Underrepresented communities are now a part of that and can receive some benefits through the incentive package. Rural Alabama, tech companies, all of that was addressed by Representative Poole and Senator Reed and the legislature and the governor during this kind of rework or this reauthorization of House Bill 192. And that's not all that they're going to be doing at the legislature, but that's a great start, is to make sure that there is a priority, a prioritization by including the tech companies, entrepreneurship, rural Alabama, underrepresented communities and companies. So that's an important thing that has already occurred with the signing of House Bill 192. Good stuff there. There is great energy and momentum, as I said. The advisory council, much like the subcommittees, they made 4 recommendations to look at the branding of the state of Alabama. How can we better brand the state of Alabama and utilize the resources that we have in the state of Alabama? Looking at the universities, as Peggy said, and how can we better partner with them to engage with universities and great research that's going on there. Certainly the recruiting and retaining of talent, both in companies and in individuals. The recruiting and training of that is so important. And certainly the value of diversity is something that the advisory council has recommended as areas we need to look at. So a lot of great progress. We put out the interim report with the recommendations that have already been voiced and mentioned today. These are preliminary recommendations. Certainly we'll work towards October in delivering a final report with final recommendations. But one thing I do want to share with the audience today is we do have meetings, monthly meetings on a regular basis. These are public meetings. And so I encourage everybody, go to InnovateAlabama.org, InnovateAlabama.org, and you can find out the dates of those meetings. We need as much engagement, as many people participating as possible to listen to these meetings, because from that, we may get some great ideas from resources that otherwise we would not. We're certainly out there on social media with Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So take a look at that, but great momentum. And we're moving very diligently towards a final report in October. And hopefully we can accomplish more policy changes throughout the state of Alabama. Peggy Miller, I will clamp down now and you'll please fill in some gaps.
Sure. I'll add in, you know, Carter, you asked, how do we go from ideas to policy? Well, I think like we all know, there is just nothing as great as a deadline. So we are halfway through this 18-month process. It's gone fast. This has been, I think, particularly challenging with COVID. These discussions would be so much faster, and I think we would accelerate our thinking if we could be together. But everything's been happening, not everything, but most of it's been happening by Zoom. And so there's discussion period, and then outside of the meetings, we try to craft how we think this could turn into a policy. So I know Chairman Poole has encouraged us to try to get to a full draft of the final by early summer, so that it's got several months to be vetted across the state by everybody, certainly people on this call today. So I think this, it actually is kind of tough, the question that you've asked, but we'll get there. It's hard to just take that funnel of good ideas and turn the ones into what could be a policy quickly this year and really make a difference. So I would say it's, as I said, it's just nothing like having a deadline.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that I have been really impressed, and this is something that was mentioned earlier, but I want to dive just a little bit deeper into it, that Secretary Rice is the chair of the Hoover Institution at Stanford. And we have a partnership with a group of fellows at the Hoover Institution that are quite possibly among the brightest people any of us have ever met. And they are taking a lot of the ideas that we are generating and a lot of the questions that we have around policy and helping us sort of think outside our own box about what policy options might be able to address some of our challenges, getting to that, assess, adopt, what was it, Zeke? Assess, adapt, adopt. There we go. But then also looking at what other states have done in similar situations. They've been helpful with that. And to Peggy's point, we do have a great support team behind us that when we generate ideas, they help with some research, and then we start thinking through some policy recommendations. So we're excited to move towards that October deadline and get y'all something to see.
Excellent. Just on that, Zeke, would you mind touching base on any other components with Dr. Rice, Secretary Rice, and the Hoover Institute, and maybe how that took shape? And then obviously it's going well so far.
Right. Well, first of all, how excited we are. We're very excited to have the Hoover Institution be a partner with us on this journey as we walk through the development of policies and recommendations for the state of Alabama. Dr. Rice's influence and her impact and Hoover Institution's impact on what we will ultimately accomplish is going to be huge. Clearly, Dr. Rice is an Alabamian. She accepted this invitation to join the council. She and her team have already had a huge impact on where we're heading with all of this. And she loves the state of Alabama and she wants to see it grow. Now, that being said, the Hoover Institution understands they're here to strengthen the policies that we're going to recommend for the state of Alabama. And they're going to do that with data-driven, well-researched, innovative policies that will help move this state forward. And we're excited about that. Excuse me. As Miller said, the fellows and the advisors that have been assigned to this commission are just top shelf, all across the board, leading experts in the world, really. And they're committed to helping us and to not only doing the research, but walking with us and discussing with us and challenging us with the things that we come up with. You think about the Hoover Institution, they're really, in many respects, a leading think tank policy. They promote individual economic and political freedom. They're just an institution that's just going to bear a lot of fruit for the state of Alabama. We're excited about that. We're excited about, as Miller said, leveraging the fellows and the advisors that are going to really be there hand in hand with us. So we're excited. That's one of the reasons we're very confident about the recommendations and the policies that will end up in our final report. And I will add one other thing, kind of going back to your initial question. At the end of the day, what Peggy said and Miller said was so true. We can develop all the policies we want and the recommendations we want, but there's got to be something on the back end. There's got to be a structure on the back end and accountability on the back end. And that really probably comes with us. It probably comes with the private community in the state of Alabama to make sure that we're there helping those and helping this industry, helping the state of Alabama by staying involved and engaged in the process. There's this point of, like we said, assessing, adapting, and adopting. There's really a fourth leg to it, and it's called applying. You've got to make it work. You've got to make it applicable to those in the state of Alabama, and that comes with a lot of ownership from us, the private sector of the state of Alabama.
And Zeke, while it would make sense for this commission to really see the implementation and help move those recommendations, it's also on the folks, it's on the shoulders of people that aren't on the commission, but want to see these things happen in their state, no matter if it's in Huntsville or Mobile or east and west through the state. And so one of the reasons we wanted to have this panel in the Innovate Huntsville week is just that, to be able to go ahead and engage and have the community hear from others around the state. They hear from Peggy and myself, just because we are geographically close, even though proximity with Zoom and the COVID environment is a little different these days. But it is our responsibility as well. So we will continue to work with y'all on all the things that are coming out from this commission. I'd like to go back just a minute. Across one of the themes across the conversation, especially on some of the recommendations, were about branding. And I just want to hit that again because in North Alabama or wherever, the idea that moving people in and have to sometimes outrun the last name, I think either Peggy or Miller said it. I think that's something that is real. And but we've, at least in Huntsville, we've said, well, if we can just get them down here, they might come in kicking and screaming, but they're never going to leave. And so that's the kind of thing that we want to have. And that's not specific to Huntsville, but it is something that we've seen over the years. And so, Peggy, let me start with you. Just any other details that might you could enlighten us on some of the branding aspects to really talk about the warm water that already exists here in Alabama for innovators and entrepreneurs. And then I'll open it up to Miller and Zeke as well.
Sure. And you're right, Carter. Right now, the window is wide open for ideas to come into this commission. When it comes to branding, I think we all believe that storytelling is the best way to accomplish an objective. And so storytelling on great examples of successes in Alabama, in education, in corporate, in entrepreneurship, we want to get those stories out. The other thing that we've noticed, though, is that a lot of the big companies in Alabama and small, and I would throw in BioAlabama here too, have felt the need to develop their own videos, 4 or 5 minute videos that just describe all the great things that are happening in Alabama. And so the thought is to bring some of those pieces together. A lot of little good stories are there, and develop a storytelling theme where something is coming out all the time about the accomplishments in Alabama. So I'd say we're going to use a storytelling framework for getting those messages out, and to do them in repetitively. And we've got to, as beautiful as Alabama is, we've got to get beyond the Alabama is beautiful for this particular message. So we're looking at moving beyond that. But I know that the commission's planning to use professional marketing for this and to bring this whole project in together. So I think we may see those benefits right away.
I will just piggyback on what Peggy said. I totally agree. In many respects, our best brand is to tell our story. And many times the folks that need to tell the story are folks that weren't born and raised in Alabama, but moved to Alabama and stayed in Alabama. So I think that's one thing we need to take a look at. There's certainly great examples in Huntsville, great examples across the state of Alabama where industry leaders moved to the state of Alabama and they recognize what we recognize, and that is it's a great place to live and a great state. And you're right, we've got to move beyond the Alabama is beautiful. But one of the things that the advisory council did mention is do take a look at the ecological aspect of the state of Alabama, the natural resources we have, the beautiful mountains in North Alabama to the beaches in South Alabama. We do have resources that certainly can tag along as a positive for the state of Alabama. But I totally agree with Peggy. It's about telling your story.
Not to pile on to the storytelling aspect, but I think one of the things that is we've been sort of working on some talent retention and some talent attraction messaging and thoughts around how to make sure that we're telling the story and making sure that people understand the opportunities that exist in Alabama. But one of the things that is particularly interesting, and I've learned a lot by working with some much younger folks than I, is that they are very, very civic and socially minded. And so if we can create not only the narrative of the cost of living and the cost of doing business and sort of the great life that you can have in Alabama, as well as the incredible Southern hospitality, but also you can be a part of something really cool in a state that has had its challenges. And that's one of the selling points. And I apologize, but in Birmingham, we do have this Venture for America group. And one of the reasons that a lot of those VFAs come to Birmingham is because they have an opportunity. And I think this would be the case in any city in Alabama, but they have an opportunity to make a difference in our community. And they don't have that necessarily in other communities. They don't have the access. They don't have the sort of the need. And I think that that's something that's really appealing to a lot of people. And we just need to make sure that we tell that in a way that the message gets out there in the right way.
Yeah, I just, again, Miller said not to pile on, but I'll pile on. The most powerful message is that testimonial from somebody who's not getting paid to tell the story and that has had a good experience, and sometimes from another area. I mean, the automotive industry in the state is one that comes to mind when the leadership at Mercedes came in. They did their work, and then they were to a large degree evangelists for others, not specific to aerospace, to automotive, but across the board. And to be able, from some of the early people at Mercedes to say, Alabama did what they told us they would do. That's why we're expanding. While that's Mercedes and that's a huge area and sector, there's no reason why we can't do the same thing from that startup that has grown and been successful in many different ways, because you're going to have a variety of stories to be able to talk about success, and everybody's not going to need to be completely pigeonholed. So that's great to hear, and look forward to seeing more of that. Last question before we wrap up to Miller. I think I called you on your second day at EDPA to say that Alabama Capital Network's loss was EDPA's gain. And with your focus on entrepreneurship and innovation, can you just give us an idea a little bit more about EDPA and then what your focus is there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Carter. So I am about 7 weeks into this job, roughly. So I'm still learning for sure, but I do know that EDPA's vision, at least from an innovation and entrepreneurship perspective, which is where I'm focused, is to expand the access of Alabama's entrepreneurs and propel them to success. So our signature program, Alabama Launchpad, and I believe Peggy was a winner of that within the last few years, has developed a new element that I'm really excited about with what we are calling launch advisors. And they will be acting as business consultants for all the finalists. The non-dilutive grant funding that the winners get is, of course, wonderful. But we also want to make sure that the winners are able to spend the money in the most impactful way possible. And those launch advisors will help them plan what they're going to do. And then there are also those who don't win, but we still want them to leave Launchpad with a clear idea of who they are and what they're working towards to be successful in Alabama. So that's Launchpad. And also on Launchpad side of things, I do want to mention that and this has been a topic of conversation in this call, but we have made a huge push to strategically direct outreach to women, minorities, and rural communities. So we've set some internal goals around increasing those numbers within Launchpad, and we're working really hard to reach those. And then I mentioned talent a minute ago. So we are in the process of thinking through a talent retention effort to mitigate the flood of students that leaves our state after graduation from a four-year college. We have 2/3 of our graduates that stay in Alabama for a year, but then that drops really, really significantly to, that drops really significantly after a year. So we have definitely a brain drain that is leaving the state, especially with our out-of-state kids. So our goal is to make sure that these folks know that there are options in Alabama. They have chosen, they've gotten over any perception or misperception that they might have had about the state, and they've chosen to spend time in Alabama getting their education. And so we are working on a digital and collaborative effort with our ADPA partners to hopefully be able to retain some more of those folks and create a really robust effort around that.
Fantastic. That sounds good. Look forward to seeing what takes shape there as well. So let me see if there are, I don't think we've got any questions, but before we wrap up, are there any other thoughts or takeaways from the panelists that are here with us? G, Peggy, Miller, any closing thoughts, words of encouragement?
Well, go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked a lot about storytelling. We need the stories. So I think for the folks that are part of Innovate Huntsville, we would love to get stories coming in through that organization that could become the germ of a little, a chapter or a video. So more stories out there. And, I think we always are, our whole community is one that says, good luck and stand by and try hard. It's a lot of these good ideas with perseverance do come through. None of it's easy, but it is so appreciated in the end. So thanks for including us in this Innovate Huntsville, and send us stories. Thank you.
Miller, you want to add some comments to that?
Sure. Well, thank you so much. We are really appreciative. I was also answering a question that came in about Launchpad. So I was getting that out before we close up. But thank y'all so much for having us. We're really excited about the Innovation Commission's work and really for the future of Alabama. I think we're at a great spot, and I'm just excited to see what comes next.
Well, I certainly won't. I certainly agree with all the comments that have been made, and I too am excited and confident that with the focus areas around entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology, the priority that we're making towards that, and the startup companies across the state of Alabama, the policies that are in place, the policies hopefully that we can develop as we adapt and adopt for the state of Alabama, I'm excited about. We have made some progress. We know we're nowhere near where we need to be at the end of the day with a final series of recommendations for the governor. But we are confident that we've got great partners all across the state of Alabama, Innovate Huntsville being one. We appreciate so much the opportunity to be here, because I know we all want one thing, and that is one thing in common, and that is to grow and elevate the state of Alabama and to diversify the economy in the state of Alabama. That's what our goal is, and we're excited about that. And we're confident with the partnerships that we have all across the state that we'll get there. So thank you for the opportunity, Carter.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much for being here, and for the panelists, but then also for the rest of the folks watching. Innovate Huntsville's got a number of different events and activities all through the week. Highlighting a few, you're going to have the Ignite Entrepreneur Panel, which is tomorrow, the NADA Trade Compliance Roundtable that will, especially in this community, really always is needed, and have some good Q&A going along with the export world. Boost Idea Competition is Thursday, and then the Entrepreneur Awards are wrap up the week on Friday. But as you're moving forward, thanks very much for being here. But then also follow the Innovate Alabama. Go to the Innovate Alabama website, watch for it on social media. Same thing with Innovate Huntsville, which is what we're working on right now. And all of these different, the tags and everything else can be found on either of those sites. And thanks very much to Alex Kate, who is here at HudsonAlpha, and he was the driving force from our organization with Innovate Huntsville. as well as all the people that are involved in making Innovate Huntsville possible. So with that, we will close it. But again, thank you all very much for your time. That is the one resource no one can get more of. And so we appreciate you taking the time today, and look forward to seeing you and have everybody really energized as we're moving forward. So thanks very much and have a great week. Thanks very much, everybody.